Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have supervision, enhanced hearing, extraordinary reflexes, to be, dare we say, superhuman? Well, Roku's new Pro Series TV can't do any of that for you. But with a 4K screen, side-firing speakers, and a blazing fast refresh rate, it'll sure feel like it. Elevate your entertainment using all your favorite apps like iHeart and play all your music, radio, and podcasts with the new Roku Pro Series. Your senses aren't better. Your TV is.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
John, Jay, and Rich. We are like a whole vibe.
Looking for the truth? You'll find it on Coast to Coast AM.
So you've been watching some of the hearings going on in Washington, D.C. Do you think these legislators really want to get to the answer, or are they doing this to show face? What do you think's going on?
I think it's more a case of you have been lying to us. You aren't elected. You people assumed positions within the military, within the intelligence departments, and you are withholding information from us.
And of course, the big question is, why? What are they hiding?
They're hiding the fact that they don't have answers. And again, I think they have just perpetuated this lie for so many years that they would lose all faith. The idea that you're talking about the biggest story in the last 1,000 years and you have been deceiving the world about this, that is criminal as far as I'm concerned.
Welcome to Coast AM. I'm your host, Rich Barrett, tonight, sitting in for the great George Norrie. I want to thank George for inviting me to sit in. Tonight, we got a lot of stuff. Here's a little bit of a menu for you. If you are a fan of Ancient Aliens, you know our first guest, Mike Barra. Now, we have him on specifically to talk about the Kennedy documents that are coming out and the link between his murder and knowledge of aliens and the moon and how that is all connected. Well, I have so many questions for Mike because he's a very thoughtful guy, and I've listened to him for years with George and on Ancient Aliens. And this show, in the spirit of what Coast to Coast is, going back to Art Bell, you're going to get a bunch of nods of all those shows in one tonight. I've heard many, but I haven't really asked all the questions. So we're going to go down the rabbit hole together with Mike. And then in the second part of the show, this is going to be great too, because we're talking to one of the good ones, Linda Salvin, who is a psychic, but not just any sort of psychic. She's got her PhD in the metaphysical, and we are going to open the phones for you to talk to her. And then, of course, open lines later tonight. And I realized as we're getting ready for the show that today is the 28th anniversary of the Phoenix Lights. If you're not familiar with the Phoenix Lights, it is widely considered to be one of the most documented mass sightings of a UFO, really, in American history. Happened where I am right now. I'm broadcasting tonight from Phoenix, and it looked like what's been described is a gigantic, low-flying, silent craft. In fact, some people say that it looked like it could have been like a quarter-mile long. I don't even know where you would land something like that if it was one of ours. But sightings all over the place, from Tucson to Phoenix in a matter of minutes. Some people said, the military said, well, we were putting flares up, but flares don't travel like that. I kind of wonder now if we were seeing drone technology 28 years ago. But that is going to bring us into Mike Barra, and he definitely has some opinions on why the truth that Kennedy wanted out never got out and what the thinking was behind keeping all this stuff, whatever is true, whatever we know, why it like coincides with, if we know what we know, why it's a societal collapse. I really don't get that. I feel like that's a pretty extreme stretch. After all, we don't seem to overreact to anything, do we? That was facetious. Well, anyway, so we come back, take a quick break, and that'll give us some time to talk to Mike Barra here, and then your calls too. And of course, my thanks to Dan on the board tonight, and Gina, the call screener, who you will talk to when you call in tonight. But we are all the way live, 4 hours tonight, because that matters. Thanks for staying with me. This is Coast to Coast AM.
During tax season, your sensitive info does a lot of traveling to places you can't control, stopping off at payroll, your accountant or tax preparer, and other countless data centers on its way to the IRS. Any of them can expose you to identity theft because they all have the info on your W-2. Just the ticket for criminals to steal your identity. No wonder the IRS reported tax fraud due to identity theft went up 20% last year. You need LifeLock. They monitor millions of data points per second and alert you to threats you could miss. If your identity is stolen, LifeLock's U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, backed by the $1 Million Protection Package, and restoration is guaranteed or your money back. Don't let identity thieves take you for a ride. Get LifeLock protection for tax season and beyond. Join now, save up to 40% your first year with promo code George. Call 1-800-LifeLock or go to lifelock.com. Use promo code George for 40% off. Terms apply.
Real people, real stories.
I have bruising that's all over my arms. 3 weeks after I was on the carnivore, I noticed, I'm looking at my arms, and I said, gee, I don't have any bruises on my arms, and I'm always full of bruises. I can't put my finger on it, but I know something's happening. I have to tell you, that has to be the carnivore.
I've got a Labrador. She could hardly lift herself up off the floor. I won't tell you what the veterinarian said, but the treatment was chemotherapy. And I said, no way. That's when I said, you know what, this could be the ticket. So I started administering it, and she took to it right away. In 3 weeks, you could tell she was very alert. 6 weeks into the protocol, she seemed like she was 100%. She was going on 5-mile walks. I'm like, my goodness, she is just like prime again.
Call 866-836-8735. That's 866-836-8735. Or visit carnivore.com. That's carnivora.com.
Welcome back to Coast AM. I am your host, Rich Barra. Now let me introduce you to no relation, Mike Barra. He is a New York New York Times best-selling author, lecturer, and TV personality whose books have sold over 100,000 copies worldwide. He's made hundreds of TV appearances, including on Ancient Aliens, and is a contributing writer for the YouTube channel, The Y-Files, which I check out pretty much every day, too. What a pleasure to have you on. Mike, welcome to the show. Nice to meet you.
Thanks. Yeah, it's great to meet another Barra, even though we don't spell it the same way. But
you got Italian roots, or is that Barra not Italian?
Hungarian, actually.
Hungarian.
Yeah, Hungarian.
Okay.
And it may have been shortened from something else, but I had a friend once who traveled to Eastern Europe and said, actually, Barra is not that big in Hungary, but it was really big in Romania. And apparently, I have a fairly large following in Romania. I have to go there sometime.
Check that out. Well, that seems like that's right up your alley. Checking out like some vampire lore. Why not?
Yeah, well, why not? Yeah, I haven't done vampires before, but it's time to maybe do a vampire book or something.
So I'm a longtime listener of Coast to Coast. Loved George Norrie, loved Art Bell, love those guys. They're mentors. But you need to take me down the rabbit hole for the first time, because after listening to the show, and I don't know, honestly, really, truly after COVID, the whole moon thing, either we've gone a million times and we've got, a secret space program, or we've never gone. And I believe both when I hear them both. So I want you to take me gingerly down the rabbit hole, and let's talk about all the things about the Kennedy connection and all that. So first of all, when did you first feel like something was amiss or connected with what we know about the moon and President Kennedy himself?
When I was watching it on TV, I felt that when I was a young boy watching all these missions, I just felt like there was something wrong. There were things they weren't telling us. There was, I remember watching the moon landings on television, and there were times when the camera would pan away from the astronauts, like when it was on, they were using a lunar rover, and they had a remotely controlled camera. And I'm like, why are we not watching what the astronauts are doing? And then they would say really weird things like, well, we haven't really been able to look around any more than you've seen. And I'm like, we didn't see anything because the camera was looking at everything except what you guys were doing at the base of the hexagonal pyramid mountain that you're telling us is a mountain, right? So it was one of those things where I just always had this sneaking suspicion that things weren't right. And then
okay, let me pause you just for a second. So when you feel like they're not right, when are you saying they're not showing us everything on the moon, or are you saying those aren't actually videos from the moon?
No, it's that we went to the moon. Absolutely. I'll fight you on that one. And they're not showing us what they're really doing. That's what felt odd to me, that there was stuff there that they didn't want us to see. And, remember, I was in a TV show called Truth Behind the Moon Landing, where I had to play the crazy conspiracy guy. And I think, I had to make the arguments for the moon landing hoax stuff. And it just, as we went through the show, none of it added up. That's one of the things that I did. One of the reasons I did it was because, I knew we went, and I knew we were going to get to the truth of it in the end. It was a Science Channel show from 2019. So, I know we went, and it's more a question of why did we cover up what we found there, and what did we cover up?
Okay, let's
I
go there.
I think really, people don't know this, but Richard Hoagland, who I understand you're going to have on, my co-author on Dark Mission, I understand you're going to have Richard's going to be on with George this week coming up, or very soon. He was there when the rumor started that they faked the whole thing in a movie studio in Nevada, and guess who started it? NASA did. So NASA wants the conspiracies about the moon to be something dumb that's easily disprovable, I think, as opposed to people really looking closely at the pictures and looking at the film and saying, that what? Where are they? Where's the astronauts? What are they doing? So that's my perspective on it.
Okay, so why would NASA bring me back to that? So if NASA started the rumors, why would they want to start the rumors instead of just covering what they're covering?
Because they needed, in other words, if people started getting suspicious about, I think, what was there, because I think they discovered there was more ancient alien technology there than they could even imagine. And I think they figured stuff is going to slip through the cracks. And I believe that they were the ones that helped start this rumor in order to make that the conspiracy theory. So when people bring up the moon and conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists like me, which I proudly say that I am, the first thing they go do is, oh, you think we faked the moon landings? Well, no, that's dumb. I don't think that at all. I think we went to the moon and performed a bunch of secret society Masonic ceremonies and brought back a whole bunch of technology. That's what I think. But they didn't want people to ask that question. They wanted people, when they thought about conspiracies about NASA and the moon, to think about, oh, we faked the whole thing in a movie studio in Area 51 with Stanley Kubrick directing, which is, of course, absolutely silly. But that's what I think.
Okay. I was watching one of your lectures, and I'm going to kind of dive into something that you just said. So one of the things you bring up in your lectures is that when Kennedy gets elected as president, which you make a pretty big case that was no coincidence, that had been planned out for a long time, because nothing like that just happens without the powers that be pushing it forward. One of the first things he says is that he's coming after secret societies. Mm-hmm. Maybe the first speech he gave. So he's coming after the Freemasons, but yet the Apollo mission wasn't him pushing against the secret society that, well, I'm going to do my own thing. But then doesn't the Apollo logo itself have a lot of secret society nods to it?
Oh yeah, I mean the logo is, and again, Richard Hoagland is the guy who discovered this and really put it all together. It's the program is called Apollo, which is Greek mythology, but the symbol is the constellation of Orion. And there is some reality to the fact that the original program was named Project Orion, but when they changed it to Project Apollo, they kept the constellation of Orion. Now, the constellation of Orion is deeply connected to the ancient Egyptian stellar religion, and it represented the good god Osiris, who was the overseer of the netherworlds, of the afterlife. And if you look at when they landed on the moon and when they did certain events, and Orion is always at 33 degrees, at 19.5 degrees above the landing site or on the horizon. These are all ancient symbolic positions which supposedly create good auspices, create good energies that help you succeed in your mission. And it became so pervasive that NASA did this, especially in the 60s, that you couldn't ignore it. And so Orion, ultimately, when you get down to it, is a Masonic symbol. It's connected to Osiris. Osiris is the god that the Freemasons ultimately worship, as does, the Nazis, the SS. They actually also worshipped Osiris. And if you look at NASA, what they were made up of, they were made up of Freemasons and a lot of guys from Germany, from World War II, Nazis, from the SS. And then out in Pasadena at JPL, you had a group called the Magicians that were sort of associated with.
What are you looking for in a new smart TV? 4K picture quality, high quality and immersive sound, a sleek design? All of those are givens, but only the new Roku Pro Series has all of those and the Roku streaming experience, an award-winning OS. Get fast, easy access to all your apps like iHeart, where you can stream all your favorite music, radio, and podcasts all day, and regular all-inclusive trips to Roku City. The new Roku Pro Series, a smart TV built by the streaming pros.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Aleister Crowley, and they also saw Osiris as their top dog, their ultimate guy. So this whole Orion, Osiris, NASA connection is just so deep and so pervasive that, I just can't ignore it anymore. And I know it's hard for people to grasp. The hardest thing is to try to convince people that I'm not crazy when I talk about this. It was NASA that was crazy doing all this.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that it's not simple. You can't just say they picked the landing spot because it had masonry ties. Well, it's like there's so much that you got to think about when you start unveiling this.
Exactly, because the thing is, you have to pick the landing site, date, time first, and then you build your launch window back from that. And the guy who picked all the landing sites where they had, Orion's belt at exactly 33 degrees right over the landing site on Hitler's birthday was Dr. Farouk El-Baz, who was a geologist, but whose father was, guess what? An expert in the ancient Egyptian stellar religion. So you have all these connections that just can't be coincidences. They're all, the whole thing was planned that way.
You talk a lot about coincidences that just are not coincidences. And since we're going to get into the Kennedy thing, in the space thing, you kind of mentioned about how were there film cameras around when he was in the military, catching him doing heroic things.
Well, yeah, that was more geared towards George Herbert Walker Bush, who has some very deep connections to Nazi Germany, which are, that's a whole another rabbit hole. You want to do a whole show on that. But yeah, I mean, how did there happen to be somebody there with a film camera catching him being rescued after he was shot down in World War II? And then you look at Bill Clinton meeting President Kennedy at the White House. And, there was a whole group of these young 14-year-old boys who were in this group that went to Washington, D.C. And the only picture that was taken is the one of Bill Clinton. And then you look at Bill Clinton's mom was a nurse and she was stationed at the same hospital that JFK was recuperating at after the PT-109 incident in Arizona. And then she moves, moves to Hope, Arkansas, and has Bill Clinton 9 months after she was at the same hospital as JFK himself. So,
not a coincidence.
Add it all up, and then you kind of look at that and you said, well, that can't really be a coincidence. And then you think about, well, why did Ken Starr want the famous blue dress? So he could conduct a DNA test and find out whether Bill Clinton was an illegitimate Kennedy or an illegitimate Rockefeller. So the more you step into the non-technical scientific aspects of it, the weirder the whole thing gets. And it's actually kind of exciting to uncover all this stuff when you start digging into it.
So let's say I'm coming from the place that you definitely believe there is a deep state and has been for a long time. Mm-hmm. So do you think before Kennedy became president, he knew enough about aliens before he was elected? Or is that one of those things that once you get into the White House, they hand you the Book of Secrets or whatever that is?
Well, I think by the time Kennedy got in there that they had decided within MJ-12, Majestic 12, which is the higher super up, organization that really ran the alien question back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, ran everything to do with aliens. I think that by the time Kennedy got there, they had decided they didn't really need to bring presidents in on this. And there is a document called the Interplanetary Phenomenon report, or the IPU report, and it states frankly in there that one of the few members of Congress or the government that knows about Roswell is John F. Kennedy, a new congressman from Massachusetts, and he knows it because he knows this guy or that guy. And this is all in the book, by the way, Ancient Aliens and JFK. It shows that he did know it, and that he had found out information because he was very close with James Forrestal. Now, James Forrestal was, of course, the first American Secretary of Defense, and he was MJ3. He was the third-ranking member of the MJ-12 syndicate organization. And he was a close family friend of the Kennedys, and JFK almost certainly knew what Forrestal knew about aliens. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest, Dr. Michael Salla has been great digging some of this up, that Forrestal and Kennedy both felt the same way, that the American people in the world should be told about the alien presence. And so since they were on the same side, Forrestal appeared to have been murdered. I mean, you go through that detail.
I was just about to ask you about that. Would that have been the MJ-12 taking him out?
Yes. And remember, before they well, I'm getting really down the rabbit hole tonight.
That's okay. That's what we're here for.
Before they assassinated him physically, they assassinated his character in the press. And, there were all these horrible articles written about him, how he was mentally unstable and he had all these emotional problems and he had to be drugged. And they basically tried to character assassinate the guy. And then that got him forcibly sent to Bethesda Naval Hospital, where he accidentally fell or threw himself from a 16th floor window onto the concrete below after having strangled himself with his own pajama drawstring. So, there's a book out there called The Strange Death of James Forrestal, and it's really...
What are you looking for in a new smart TV? 4K picture quality? High quality and immersive sound? A sleek design? All of those are givens, but only the new Roku Pro Series has all of those and the Roku streaming experience, an award-winning OS. Get fast, easy access to all your apps like iHeart, where you can stream all your favorite music, radio, and podcasts all day, and regular all-inclusive trips to Roku City. The new Roku Pro Series, a smart TV built by the streaming pros.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Really bizarre stuff. And here's another interesting thing, which is that President Kennedy made one trip to Arlington National Cemetery during his administration. He was only in office for 3 years, but he went there in May, on Memorial Day, May of 1963, the year that he was killed. And after he gave his speech, his motorcade drove to a specific spot in Arlington National Cemetery, and he sat there silently for about 40 minutes looking at one grave, and that was the grave of James Forrestal. And I think that there's a lot of evidence, which I guess we'll get into as the show goes on, that Kennedy had decided that he was going to tell people what he knew about the aliens and the alien presence, and he was going to share it with the Russians. And I think that's what ultimately got him killed.
Oh, really? That's actually, I haven't heard that connection until you brought that up. And what do you think the relationship was between JFK and James Forrestal? Why is that significant to what we're about to get into here?
It was one of deep friendship, and he was a family friend. He golfed with Joe Kennedy Sr. on many occasions. And after John F. Kennedy was injured and then recuperated at the hospital where he apparently fathered Bill Clinton,
that's crazy too.
Well, it is, but I mean, you can certainly make a circumstantial case that there's something there, right? I mean, the fact that Bill's mom was the nurse at the hospital that JFK recuperated at is pretty wild. And then, she suddenly leaves and 9 months later, Bill Clinton's born. But anyway, the relationship was very close because after JFK was discharged, because he was disabled to the point with his back injury that he couldn't serve in the military anymore, they discharged him and he became a newspaper reporter, and he was actually quite good at it, hired by William Randolph Hearst, who was a fellow, today it'd be billionaires, but multimillionaire friend of Joe Kennedy. And he was assigned to cover, guess who? James Forrestal, as the Secretary of the Navy, as he traveled around post-war Nazi Germany. And on at least one occasion, and this is really interesting, they were within a half a day's drive of the area in Silesia where the Nazi Bell was tested, where the test rig was. So I feel like, if that was
from Ancient Aliens.
Yeah, if that was alien technology or some outgrowth of alien technology, he and Forrestal certainly could have gone and seen it then and, investigated it. So I think there's just this really strong connection between the two men. By the way, I wanted to say on my Twitter, if you don't mind, it's at Mike Barra 333. I'm posting pictures that kind of illustrate some of the things we're going to talk about.
Oh, excellent. Yes. And we'll link all that up to Coast AM too. And when we come back, let's talk about what alien stuff might be on the moon. When we come back on Coast to Coast AM.
Looking for the truth? You'll find it on Coast to Coast AM.
So you've been watching some of the hearings going on in Washington, D.C. Do you think these legislators really want to get to the answer, or are they doing this to show face? What do you think's going on?
I think it's more a case of you have been lying to us. You aren't elected. You people assumed positions within the military, within the intelligence departments, and you are withholding information from us.
And of course, the big question is, why? What are they hiding?
They're hiding the fact that they don't have answers. And again, I think they have just perpetuated this lie for so many years that they would lose all faith. The idea that you're talking about the biggest story in the last 1,000 years and you have been deceiving the world about this, that is criminal as far as I'm concerned.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tony Tantillo, your fresh grocer, and today's tip of the day, sugar pie pumpkins. If you want to make a wonderful pumpkin pie or a wonderful pumpkin soup, the sugar pie pumpkin is the kind to use. These pumpkins here are very edible and very delicious, although all pumpkins are, but these are a little bit sweeter. When you select these little pumpkins, what you want to do is make sure they're bright orange. If they're not orange, if they have any greening to them, don't buy them, and make sure they're not soft. Now, one thing about pumpkins that everyone should know, that pumpkins is a soft squash, not a hard squash. So don't hold them for too long, otherwise they'll become super soft and there's nothing you can do with them because they'll be full of decay. So there you go, the sugar pie pumpkins. Make that wonderful pumpkin pie and invite me over with some ice cream and coffee, and we'll have dessert. And I'm Tony Tantillo, your fresh grocer. For more recipes on pumpkins and other produce items, just go to TonyTantillo.com.
Has anybody told you about Coast to Coast AM tonight?
Coast to Coast is one of those programs that deals with strange mysteries. We'll look at Bigfoot. We'll look at UFOs. We'll look at real science. And we'll also look at conspiracies and what it all means to you, the listeners of Coast to Coast AM.
It's the best in overnight talk radio. Coast to Coast AM. Looking for the truth? You'll find it on Coast to Coast AM.
What do you think the odds are of an alien civilization developing somewhere else?
Well, I think the odds of that happening are excruciatingly high. So if it's a 1 in a million chance that intelligent life develops, you still got a really big number. So I think it's really high that life is out there. In fact, intelligent life is out there. The big question, of course, is whether or not it's been here. That's the real question.
Coast to Coast AM sure sounds great in the middle of the night, but you don't have to be nocturnal to enjoy this amazing show. The Coast Insider is your key to a normal life. For 15 cents a day, you can wake up refreshed, knowing that last night's show is waiting for you with podcasting. Listen on your way to work, and again on your way home. Or listen to one of over 1,000 archived shows from the past 5 years. The Coast Insider Club is a must-have feature for all Coast to Coast AM listeners. Visit coasttocoastam.com to sign up today. You'll sleep like a baby, knowing you'll never miss your favorite guests or topics ever again. Remember, a 1-year subscription comes out to only 15 cents a day. Sign up today at coasttocoastam.com.
Premier Networks presents Coast to Coast AM with Rich Berra.
Our guest tonight is Mike Berra. No relation, but good guy. I might have a little hungry in me. It might not all be Italian. And he might have a little Italian in him, too. The conspiracy goes on. I want to bring Mike up because we're talking about President Kennedy and his knowledge about aliens before he was elected. And then the bold statement to go to the moon, almost as putting his thumbs up to the secret society that was saying, no, we can't tell people about aliens. So if this is all true, Mike, or give me some semblance that how did we know there was something on the moon? Who was the first to break that story?
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have supervision, enhanced hearing, extraordinary reflexes, to be, dare we say, superhuman? Well, Roku's new Pro Series TV can't do any of that for you. But with a 4K screen, side-firing speakers, and a blazing fast refresh rate, It'll sure feel like it. Elevate your entertainment using all your favorite apps like iHeart and play all your music, radio, and podcasts with the new Roku Pro Series. Your senses aren't better. Your TV is.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void were prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Well, that's a good question, and I think it's speculation. Let's face facts. It's speculation. If there are stories of accidents, crashes of UFOs in places like Aurora, Texas, and there was a big incident in Italy, apparently in the 1930s under Mussolini's Italy. So it's possible that these crashes revealed to them, well, there's aliens around. They're not from the Earth, whatever these people are, whatever these things are. So they're probably on the moon. It could be a simple supposition. It could be that they captured aliens. If the Roswell stuff is true, there may have been a survivor that may have told them, well, we've been on the moon for millions of years. And so they may have known it in the sense that they were told this stuff was there. Or if you look at the technology curves, if you look at the development of transportation technology, which is one of the things I talk about in the book, Ancient Aliens at JFK, there should have been like an anti-gravity type of breakthrough in 1960, and instead we just got chemical rockets. So,
and
there's
that thing
a lot
you were
of
talking
research.
about with the Germans, that bell that sits inside that thing, that sits inside that little Stonehenge-looking thing, looks like it's an anti-gravity machine, and that would have been in the 40s or 30s, right, when that was discovered. Right. So where did that technology go? Or are those some of the saucers that we've seen?
Yeah, and there are people like Marina Sarin and others out there that they talk about the Aldebaran connection, that there's supposedly these aliens from Aldebaran that we're working with or helping the Nazis. And Eric von Daniken will tell you that Hermann Oberth, who was Werner von Braun's mentor and sort of father figure, brilliant rocket physicist, said the reason why Germany had all this great technology is because we had help from the people of other worlds. So I think that in the background, there was this widespread knowledge, or fairly widespread knowledge, among scientific circles and military intelligence circles that there were aliens out there and that they'd probably been to the moon. Now, that means we could have built German flying saucers and maybe just gone to the moon and taken pictures of a whole bunch of stuff. And but that's not. I think the implication against that is probably pretty strong, or the indication against that is pretty strong, because we spent so much time and energy photographing the moon. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of photographs, which of course we needed to do if we were going to have a public space program. But it's also possible that we sent all these missions like Lunar Orbiter and Ranger and Surveyor to really, really get good maps of the moon, because, we kind of were worried about what we were going to find there and wanted to know where to land and where not to land. If you wanted to keep this a secret, you want to land in the middle of nowhere. So, like Apollo 11 was definitely landed in the middle of nowhere. And you also, there's this theory about these towering glass-like structures, crystal structures that Hoagland's talked about, that acted as a meteor shield over the lunar surface. And you got to figure out how to navigate around that stuff too, which is, maybe one of the reasons why the Apollo landers had two radars on them, one side mounted and one forward mounted. So,
so the goal would be to get to the moon, because there's stuff there that you can bring back and reverse engineer, and whoever has the first landing on the moon that can bring the trinkets, the treasure back, and reverse engineer it, then you run the whole show. You've basically got a galactic advantage that no other country has.
Yeah, talk about the ultimate high ground, right? If you got the ancient alien technology from the moon and you're able to bring it back and reverse engineer it, then you really have a military advantage. That's why I think that when Kennedy started making agreements with Russia, and it appears that they actually had an agreement with Kennedy and Khrushchev, to go to the moon together. The United States and the Soviet Union were not going to fight each other or race each other to the moon. They were going to go in unison and share what they found. Once Kennedy had reached that agreement in late 1963 with Khrushchev, that's when they decided they had to eliminate him. And I believe that's exactly what they did. And that was the motivation for the assassination.
Okay. When we come back, let's talk a little bit about that. And let's talk about the Tesla connection, too. Let's take a quick break. Back next with Mike Barra on Coast to Coast AM.
One of our new sponsors, Rapid Radio's walkie-talkies, lets you keep in touch with family at the touch of a button. These are not your average walkie-talkies. These are secure and protected with a 256-bit encryption. Not even the government can listen in, and no data is stored anywhere. One-touch connection that only people in your group can hear, or you can have a one-on-one option. It's not public communications. No tracking, nothing recorded or stored, and you cannot be tracked with this device. No subscriptions ever. Small business owners, listen up. Wouldn't it be great to pick up a walkie-talkie, push a button, and just start talking to your staff nationwide? Up to 200 units on one feed, and they're 100% private. Ready to go right out of the box? Visit rapidradios.com. For a limited time, go to rapidradios.com and you'll get up to 60% off. Free UPS shipping from Michigan. Add code radio and get an extra 5% off.
You know the feeling when you're about to cut into a juicy steak and hope it tastes as perfect as it looks? Worry no more. With Chef IQ Sense, it's possible to get it right every time. How? It's a modern, completely wireless cooking thermometer that eliminates under or overcooking your food, no matter how you cook it. Chef IQ Sense was designed to withstand extreme heat and can even survive in your deep fryer. From grilling to roasting or baking, Chef IQ Sense guarantees that your chicken, meat, or fish will come out exactly to your preferred outcome. Using Chef IQ Sense is so simple. Insert the wireless probe into your food, choose your desired doneness on the Chef IQ app, and it'll alert you when it's ready. Stay connected and monitor your food from anywhere over Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So stop the confusion, eliminate the risk, and serve every meal with confidence. Chef IQ Sense works out of the box and with your favorite appliances. You can find the IQ Sense at chefiq.com and save 15% at checkout with code USA. That's chefiq.com.
Welcome back to Coast AM. I'm your host, Rich Barra. Tonight, our guest is Mike Barra from Ancient Aliens, among other things. And all of his books, by the way, and his Twitter and everything is all linked up at Coast AM. Mike, before we went to break, we were kind of talking about Kennedy being singled out, or at least targeted now, because of his agreement with Russia to not have a space race, but to go together. And the deep state did not like that. So is the deep state we're talking about or hear so much about today is the same one that was operating back in the time of Kennedy? Same group?
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's now a cancer that's kind of metastasized throughout the entire United States government. And we're performing the surgery right now. I guess Doja, you would call it exploratory surgery, trying to find out all the things they have to, all the cells they have to remove. But it's exactly the same thing. And I really think the murder of President Kennedy was the motivation behind whatever it is we're going through right now. That some people on the inside realized that our entire government had been taken over by this unelected and unaccountable elite that needed to be stopped. And it's taken us, 60 years to get to the point where I think there's some optimism we're going to be able to do it. So, I think it's exactly the same.
When you think about what Kennedy knew and what he was trying to expose, what do you think kind of got exposed through that we know about that we wouldn't have if he didn't? Like what kind of little I guess trinkets or trails, breadcrumbs did he leave for us that you can put your finger and go, aha?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say that his again, his president and the press speech, where he said, and you talked about that earlier, this was in April of 1961, and within a month or two of taking office, where he said, hey, we are opposed to secret oaths and secret societies and secrecy in general, and we want to do things in the open, and we want transparency. I mean, basically that's what he said, and I need the press to help me do that. Now, of course, the press is the opposition. So when Elon Musk talks about transparency, he gets exactly the opposite of response. They don't want transparency. They want to shut down what he calls transparency, to be fair to people on different sides of the political aisle here. I think that speech is absolutely where he laid down the law and said, I am going to war with you people. Then we had the Bay of Pigs, where Kennedy clearly said, he famously said, I want to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. And that is a reliable quote at this point. I think most people say that he did say that. So
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have supervision, enhanced hearing, extraordinary reflexes, to be, dare we say, superhuman? Well, Roku's new Pro Series TV can't do any of that for you. But with a 4K screen, side-firing speakers, and a blazing fast refresh rate, it'll sure feel like it. Elevate your entertainment using all your favorite apps like iHeart and play all your music, radio, and podcasts with the new Roku Pro Series. Your senses aren't better. Your TV is.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
And then the fact that he wanted to go to the moon itself, why was that a national imperative? I mean, we had some issues. Why did he make it an imperative? He made it an imperative because he knew what was there from his briefings with Forrestal and from his other contacts that are mentioned in that IPU report document. And he knew that when we went there, if we showed people what we really found, that it would bring us into a brave new, brand new world.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that too, because what you've done here is, I think, the two biggest topics ever that are, conspiracies to ever hit Coast to Coast AM are why Kennedy was assassinated and did we go to the moon? And you've tied them both together here. So now that is the thing I brought up.
That's what I do. That's what I do, Rich. That's what I'm good at, right?
Okay, but bring me to this, because this doesn't make any sense either. I was thinking about this too. It's like, it seems to me that we've had a couple of awakenings. I don't know what had been during the Revolutionary War, but the Kennedy assassination definitely woke people up and made them think, well, maybe not everything is as it seems. And I think every generation has one of those. And for my generation, it was the whole COVID thing. We're like, well, wait a minute. What they're telling us doesn't necessarily seem to make sense or add up. And all the people that brought that up were first labeled crazy, right? And now you know that there was probably a leak from the Wuhan lab. And it's the same thing with probably when people were talking about, well, he was assassinated by a CIA. Back then, I don't know what the talk was, but now if you say that to pretty much anybody, they would probably go, yeah, that's probably exactly what happened. That you already kind of know that kind of stuff. So when it comes to the UFO thing, the talk of the time was, you cannot reveal that there are aliens visiting or that they've been here to the general public, because society will collapse, which sounds like garbage to me. Why would society collapse? We all know there's something going on and people are lying to us. Why does anybody in power or anybody in the deep state think it'll collapse? Or is that just another lie?
No, it's not another lie. It's actually in the Brookings Report, which again, Richard Hoagland, citing my co-author from Dark
There you
Mission, The
go.
Secret History of NASA, and he found this Brookings Report, which basically was something NASA commissioned immediately upon their when they were created in 1958. I don't what's the right word I'm looking for. Anyway, I don't know, but they went through and said, look, if you're not probably going to meet ET out there, but it's probable you're going to find artifacts on the moon or on Mars or on Venus. At that time we didn't know Venus was the uninhabitable hell that it is. But and if you do, you should seriously consider not telling people without a long-term preconditioning series of like social, things like make TV shows about aliens, make Star Trek, Lost in Space, Star Wars. Let's do that, because if you tell people, you may make them nuts. And the people that are going to have the hardest time accepting this reality will be the scientists and the engineers and the religious zealots. They will have the hardest
because
time.
you can't explain a multi-world.
Right. Well, there were people like Margaret Mead that were involved with this study. So well-known anthropologists and very high-level academic people. And the reason for that is that, engineers and scientists believe that they're the smartest guys in the room all the time, right? And they said it would be very depressing to them to discover that, no, there were other far more advanced, more intelligent people than you that live other places. And that it would damage the psyche, and that it could also potentially bring down society in the sense that people would begin to get a sense of gloom and doom. And they would say to themselves, well, let's take the face on Mars as an example, right? That's something I've studied a lot too.
Yep.
Or the artifacts on the moon. I mean, you look at that and you say, okay, this is this artifact. It's a monument, but it's in ruins. And then the next question is, well, why is it in ruins? Well, Mars it's not really a planet. It was a moon of a much larger planet, a super Earth that exploded and wiped the civilization out. And then the next question is, well, wait a minute, planets can explode? Nobody told me that in school. And then you begin to think, well, what if the Earth explodes? What if the aliens come and invade us? We can't do anything to stop it. Or what if just an asteroid can just strike the planet and destroy it? Why should I bother going to work today? So that was what they were trying to avoid, was that severe sort of economic collapse by admitting, anytime you introduce something.
nothing in life means anything if everything we know about life has just been
and remember,
torn on its.
I like to say, I was at the Quantum Summit 2.0 with Mel Carman this weekend, and I told people, look, if you really get to the bottom line, everything is either money or aliens. If you look at all political events, it's either about money or aliens, right? And that sounds a little crazy, but then when you start to think about it, imagine if you have a stable environment, and then you introduce aliens into the body politic. That is the most destabilizing thing you can do, because you have no idea what the reverberations are going to be, how that wave is going to pass through the culture and society, and what the end is going to be. And if you cannot predict the outcome, it's inherently destabilizing, which is inherently bad for the people in power. Remember that quote from the X-Files, right? The well-manicured man. He said, I'm part of an organization that predicts the future, and we found the best way to predict the future is to create it. So that's what we've been fighting for the last 60 years, at least, since President Kennedy was murdered.
If you take away the sort of outdated video of the X-Files and just to read the script, it matches up a lot with what we've discovered over the last 20 years, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, as I sit here and say, there's no way that society would collapse like that. Although if you think about what happened with COVID and how people have come back different, that I remember somebody saying, like, if we shut down this country for months, it's going to be a dumpster fire for people mentally. And it absolutely happened that way, right? So maybe there is something to the fact that you can't just lay out all this truth at one time on people because they can't handle it. Maybe there is some truth to that.
And the thing is too, Rich, is remember, you grew up in a culture, in a society where there were all kinds of science fiction shows and stuff about aliens. So you grew up, you're younger than me. I assume you're younger than me. You grew up with this stuff all around you, part of this cultural conditioning that the Brookings Report talked about. I didn't. These things were all brand new when I was a kid. There were a few bad sci-fi movies in the 50s. But until Star Trek and Lost in Space and the Time Tunnel and Star Wars and all these things came along, it was really, really, you were an absolute nut if you believed in aliens.
Well, that's an interesting point. The first time you see Star Wars, I was a little kid when that came out, and you see a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then you see that it's like all cool futuristic stuff. You're like, oh, okay, I get it. It's a long time ago, but they're far away, so they're more advanced than we are. And it starts kind of like warming up your brain. Same thing with Battlestar Galactica for me when I was a little kid. I'm like, oh, okay, they're from somewhere else, but they're looking for a place called Earth. I know Earth. When they find it, it's going to be a little different. It's going to be, they're going to be the first settlers. And if you remember the way that show started, it said there are people that here that believe that life here started out there.
Yeah,
and it's almost like they're preconditioning you, like, yeah, we were just planted here. We're just kind of dropped off. And then, and then they'll come back and check on us.
That's what we now call panspermia. It's commonly and even discussed in academic circles now. But back then it was Eric von Daniken and, and ancient astronauts. And it was definitely revolutionary. And you were a crackpot if you believed in any of that stuff. Not so much anymore. Now it's fairly commonplace for people to have these kinds of discussions in a serious way, even around, the Thanksgiving dinner table. So there we are.
Carl Sagan became a UFO debunker. Tell me about that.
The interesting thing about Carl Sagan, there's a lot of interesting things about Carl Sagan, but one of the things is that early in his career, he was very into the whole ancient aliens thing. He had this role where he was putting books out and he was talking about, there could be aliens nearby. Here's why. If you look at the Drake equation and maybe they visited and maybe some of these monuments are really ancient alien stuff. And he was the first guy to point out pyramids on Mars. He called them the pyramids of Elysium. They were tetrahedral pyramids. I'm sure Richard's going to talk about tetrahedrons when he's on in a week or so, on Mars. And he was very into this stuff. And then all of a sudden, that flips. He changes, and he becomes the debunker in chief. He becomes the main guy, kind of like Neil deGrasse Tyson is now, although Neil deGrasse Tyson, listening, you are no Carl Sagan. But, he flips. And what happened that flipped him? He flipped in about 1972, and suddenly he's attacking Eric von Daniken very unfairly. He's attacked Richard Hoagland, who he was friends with for 10, 15 years. They were close friends, and he attacked him. And the reason why is that he replaced Dr. Donald Menzel on the MJ-12 committee after Menzel died.
Okay, we got to get into MJ-12 when we come back, and your calls, because I know you have questions for Mike Barra on the Kennedy and Moon connection. Just crazy stuff. Okay, that's all when we come back on Coast to Coast AM.
I'm so glad you're here. As the person who currently occupies your attention, I would like to thank you for listening to John, Jay, and Rich.
From the City of Angels, this is Coast to Coast AM with Rich Barra.
Our guest tonight is Mike Barra, and you know him from Ancient Aliens. All his information, his Twitter and all that stuff is all linked up. How to get his books at Coast to Coast AM. And Mike, we got so many calls, but if you just tuned in, Mike has dropped some what I call plutonium-filled conspiracy theories on us tonight. There's always been ruins on the moon of alien origin. And he says that Kennedy was threatened to expose that against the deep state, and that is likely what got him killed, which, you're combining all the great coast-to-coast conspiracies all in one, which I think is compact and incredible. So I'm kind of wondering about, if the deep state, let's say, that we're talking about is in charge of who gets elected, years and years and decades in advance, then how does somebody that's going to buck the system of the deep state like Kennedy get elected? Or do they get elected and then change their mind and decide they're going to go after this thing?
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have supervision, enhanced hearing, extraordinary reflexes, to be, dare we say, superhuman? Well, Roku's new Pro Series TV can't do any of that for you. But with a 4K screen, side-firing speakers, and a blazing fast refresh rate, it'll sure feel like it. Elevate your entertainment using all your favorite apps like iHeart and play all your music, radio, and podcasts with the new Roku Pro Series. Your senses aren't better. Your TV is.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not sure that they were quite in that amount of control at that period of time back in 1960. And, you know, Joe Kennedy was a powerful man and had a lot of money. And it's funny because, you know, I put this in the book where, you know, Kennedy barely squeaked through because of some very questionable, you know, speaking of issues that are current, some very questionable vote counting in Illinois and Texas. And somebody said to Joe Kennedy, wow, you know, I sure wish that night would have been over earlier. And he said, well, I'm not paying for a landslide. So, you know,
interesting.
Joe Kennedy, you know, so there was manipulation, there was stuff like that, but I don't think they had quite the level of control that they do now. I think now in the 60 years that this deep state has, like I said, metastasized into the American government. And the media, especially, I mean, that's one of the things I think that's really valuable that we're finding out is who in the media was getting paid to push certain narratives, COVID narratives and other narratives like that in the last 10, 20 years. I just think that they became much more powerful in terms of their ability to influence elections and make sure that, you know, you only had a choice between John McCain and Barack Obama, you know, Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. What a terrible choice on both sides, right? So the American people were going to lose no matter who won those elections. But I do think as you look through it, I've said there's only three guys in my lifetime that ran for president that really wanted to change things. And, you know, Kennedy and Reagan were two of them. And I think the guy that's currently back in the White House is the third one. So, you know, it just their power, they were not able to stop it, the election. But they were able then they tried to thwart Kennedy at every turn. Kennedy outsmarted them on many occasions, but, you know, that's why I think they had to resort to violence because they didn't have the level of political control and media control that they do today. And you know, maybe that's why presidents that they object to haven't been assassinated, although they've taken their pot shots at Trump for sure. But, you know, I just think it's a question of they had less influence over events then. And therefore, they had to resort to more dramatic measures. And, you know, once Kennedy had reached an agreement with Khrushchev to go to the moon together, I think that was it. We got to get rid of this guy. And it pretty much says that in a document called the Byrne Memo, which, you know, extensively details their plans for manipulating public events. And it talks about how the president, first of all, it says, if the president asks you about aliens, lie to him. If
that's in the document?
Yeah.
Like we're beyond sharing this with the president. Like he doesn't need to know.
And if he keeps pressing, bring in more of guys on this committee and we'll all lie to him together. And then it says, look, you know, we have to seriously consider wet weather in Washington, D.C., which is a sort of a clever turn of phrase for what they call wet works, which is, you know, killing someone. And it says, look, this guy is inquiring about our activities, which we cannot allow. And that is a pretty highly authenticated document by the late Dr. Bob Wood, who was an expert on documents. So, and it appears that document was actually written by Alan Dulles, who was still the head of MJ-12 at the time. So, you know, you can make a thread right through to the 2017 and now hopefully 2025 Kennedy documents that kind of say the same thing.
Let's take some calls. People are lining up to talk to you here, Mike. Let's go to the wild card line. Cornelius in Alexandria, Louisiana. You are on Coast to Coast AM with Mike Barra.
Hey, Rich and Mike. I got to tell y'all something. I told George, I first broke it with George Norway. I'm running for senator against Bill Cassidy, call him Bill the Ill, the Coward Cassidy. My name is Mr. Cornelius Lawson White, Jr. Look me up on YouTube, Cornelius Lawson White. Don't want no money. I just want prayers. So, Rich and Mike, they call me the God Guns of Gold man, the Bible Bullets and Beans man down here in Voodoo, Hoodoo, and Udo, Louisiana. I was telling the lovely call screener, Gina Salvati, Art Bell interviewed a guy in the 90s, and it was about dark skies. So I don't know if you ever saw that series, and it's about the Kennedy assassination and UFOs and everything that you and Rich and Mike are talking about. Also, there was a show on NBC called The Event, and I saw the Invaders when I was a young child. I'm 64 years old. And my dad was a Black Knights Templar, and he was also a Black 33rd degree Mason. He warned me about COVID. He said, if they ever force you to take this shot, they're getting ready for the mark of the beast. I've been looking at Elon Musk. He's been doing a good job, but he wants to put a chip in everybody's head and hand. I think in the next 5 years, we're going to have the mark of the beast, and I call AI the Antichrist intelligence. But my question for you, like I said, have you ever seen the series Dark Skies? It was in the 90s, and Art Bell interviewed the guy, and he said he was going to bring it up to today's standard. But I don't know how long the show lasts, but it was called Dark Skies. Thank you, Rich and Mike.
Yeah, Cornelius, good luck with your Senate campaign there. You're definitely into the truth, so good for you. Yeah, I think that was Bryce Zabel's show, Dark Skies. I watched it. It was basically kind of a knockoff of the X-Files. It wasn't as good and it wasn't as successful. I think it lasted a year. It had a lot of things in there about the Kennedy assassination. It was set in the 1960s. I don't think it got a lot of things accurate, but then again, there was a lot of stuff we didn't know in the 1990s that we know now. Connections with certain people and how they were affiliated with Kennedy and aliens and the whole thing. So yeah, it was a good show, and you know, it just didn't last very long. I think it lasted 20 some episodes, but I was disappointed. I was disappointed when it went away because it had an opportunity to be good, but kind of when you have the X-Files, you didn't really need Dark Skies.
Gene Roddenberry used to say, if you want to convince people of the truth, you need to do it through art. You need to do it through TV. The creator of Star Trek. So you think they were warming us up with a lot of those shows back then for the eventual truth?
Well, this is part of, I believe, the Brookings Report. The Brookings Report, mandate when they said, look, if you're going to tell people about aliens someday, you got to get the culture ready. So, and then I don't think it's a coincidence that we then had Star Trek and Lost in Space and Time.
Well, then you might make a case that the deep state created War of the Worlds to freak everybody out back in the day.
As a matter of fact, I don't remember if that's in the Kennedy book or not. It might be in the Secret Societies book, Ancient Aliens and Secret Societies, but they did. They actually commissioned Princeton University to conduct a study, a psychological warfare study, and that's who financed Orson Welles' radio broadcast of the War of the Worlds. They wanted to see what would happen if people really thought aliens were invading. And what happened was mass panic, and that was a big part. It was not really explicitly stated in the Brookings Report, but it was a big part of the overall thinking of the time, which is that you should really try to keep this, try not to let this stuff get out, because it will really be frightening to people. And they would panic because they did. They did.
Well, we got plenty of people that want to talk about that and their theories on Kennedy and the moon landing and all that combined when we come back on Coast to Coast AM.
One of our new sponsors, Rapid Radio's walkie-talkies, lets you keep in touch with family at the touch of a button. These are not your average walkie-talkies. These are secure and protected with a 256-bit encryption. Not even the government can listen in, and no data is stored anywhere. One-touch connection. The only people in your group can hear you or have your one-on-one option. It's not public communications. No tracking, nothing recorded or stored, and you cannot be tracked with this device. No subscriptions ever. Rapid radios are a great communication device for aging parents. Keep them off the internet. No more struggles with technology, just push to talk. 100% private with no plan needed. Ready to go right out of the box? We even use them at the show. Visit rapidradios.com. And for a limited time, go to rapidradios.com. You'll get up to 60% off, free UPS shipping for Michigan. Add code RADIO and get an extra 5% off.
You know the feeling when you're about to cut into a juicy steak and hope it tastes as perfect as it looks? Worry no more. With Chef IQ Sense, it's possible to get it right every time. How? It's a modern, completely wireless cooking thermometer that eliminates under or overcooking your food, no matter how you cook it. Chef IQ Sense was designed to withstand extreme heat and can even survive in your deep fryer. From grilling to roasting or baking, Chef IQ Sense guarantees that your chicken, meat, or fish will come out exactly to your preferred outcome. Using Chef IQ Sense is so simple. Insert the wireless probe into your food, choose your desired doneness on the Chef IQ app, and it'll alert you when it's ready. Stay connected and monitor your food from anywhere over Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So stop the confusion, eliminate the risk, and serve every meal with confidence. Chef IQ Sense works out of the box and with your favorite appliances. You can find the IQ Sense at chefiq.com and save 15% at checkout with code USA. That's chefiq.com.
Welcome back to Coast AM. I'm Rich Barra, sitting in for George Norrie tonight. Our guest tonight, I'm thankful to have him on, Mike Barra from Ancient Aliens, and his website is great too. If you follow his YouTube videos, in fact, I was watching about an hour and a half long presentation you were doing where you cover a lot of this stuff. And when we get through some questions, I got to ask you about the original reason I wanted to have you on the show was to ask you about what is going on in Antarctica. But we'll get to that in a second. We got to get to some of your calls. Let's go to the wild card line, and let's go to John in Wisconsin. John, welcome to Coast AM. You are on with Mike Barra.
Hello, iHeart listener. We have a confession to make. Both iHeart and this commercial you're listening to right now would probably sound a heck of a lot better on the new Roku Pro Series TV. It's got side-firing speakers that fill your room with sound, Dolby Atmos audio that puts you right in the middle of the entertainment, and the ability to pair seamlessly with your home theater sound systems that already have surround sound and booming bass. If all that sounds too good to be true, it'll sound even better on the new Roku Pro Series. Your hearing isn't better, your TV is.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hello, Rich. Hello, Mike. Thank you so much. There's no question we've been lied to from the deep state and the government. Both you gentlemen have laid that out very, very well. In my opinion, the genesis of all of this started in 1938. Our country was just coming out of the Prohibition, still recovering from the Prohibition. We had the World Wars. We had the Depression. We had an uneasy government. And as Mike just mentioned, the brilliant radio broadcast by Orson Welles, The War of the World, caused complete hysteria. Now, keep in mind, back then, we only had the radio and the print media, and correcting things took a long time. There isn't instant correction like there is today. There was massive hysteria. I think that planted the seed in the government that we just can't let things get away like we did with the War of the Worlds, even though it was fiction. Then you have the Kennedy assassination, RFK being assassinated, Martin Luther King, the moon landing. I think what happened, gentlemen, is that our government, who, in my opinion, they may be academically smart, but they have zero common sense, just decided to take the easy way out, which is a travesty to us as Americans. So I want to thank both of you gentlemen for your transparency and helping us understand things. Rich, you're doing a great job, and all the best to you in your other job. And Mike, keep up the good work. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thoughts on that, Mike?
Thanks. Well, thank you. Yeah, and I mean that stuff is all true and it's all connected, and so much of what happened in the 1930s had to do with the international bankruptcy of the United States. And again, that's a whole rabbit hole we can go down. It's completely different, and it's just become this huge globalist movement that threatens really all of our freedoms, all of our individual personal freedoms that we cherish so much in this country. And it's it goes way back, but that's post-mortem. Let's get the truth out there now. Let's fight the fights we have to fight today, and worry about the history of how we got here afterwards.
Let's go to the east of the Rockies line, and let's talk to Danny in New Jersey. Danny, welcome to Coast AM. You're on with our guest, Mike Barra.
Gentlemen, tonight's show is going to go to the Talk Radio Hall of Fame. Let's begin with the premise that everything we know about the JFK assassination is false. I personally believe there was at least two shooters, one in the front, one in the back, and they never really back then wanted to solve the case. And the thing is, I could bring up, let's say 9/11, let's bring up COVID. That we know the Communist Chinese sent it here, but they go after Fauci, so they don't want to solve that. There's a talk show host, Big Bird, Tower of Jelly, Jesse Kelly, who always goes after Fauci, but I try to call him and tell him, no, he's a front man. He's a useful idiot. Chinese communists sent it here. They knew the virus was going on. They let their people out who were sick into Europe, Australia, and America, and 7 million people were dead. Now, you often hear people say that, oh, the shots came from the side, the grassy knoll. Well, I look at the tape and the video of the Zabruta film. I don't see any shots from the side. And think about it. This is the second time I will ever say this on the radio. No shots from the side, because if you miss, who do you hit? You hit the First Lady, Jackie O. That would be unacceptable in 1963. Men did not want their females in combat. They didn't want them drafted. They didn't want their daughters, their wives, their grandmothers in combat. So let's face the facts. They don't want to solve it back then. They don't want to solve the 9/11. The Saudis' hands are all over it. And COVID, the Chinese, they put Fauci out there. I call him a Keebler elf, and they go after him. I think the experts are only experts at getting themselves on TV and the radio. I'll throw my credentials on the table. I solved the Beltway sniper case watching TV and just listen to the facts. One guy said it was a bunch of college kids. One guy said it was an ice cream truck. I said, no way. It had to be at least two Islamic shooters.
Hey, Danny, where do you get your news that isn't tilted to one side? Where do you get your information so you can form your own opinion?
All right. First, let me just lighten it up, but then I'll tell you. I always joke around. I get my information from the National Enquirer, Saturday Night Live, and Mad Magazine, but I'm just joking. I try to put together, right, everything that I feel is credible. I believe the doctors in Parkland Hospital who were there and saw Kennedy's wounds, they dealt with Kennedy wounds. Let's remember, Jack Ruby, Kennedy, and Oswald all died in the same hospital. And Ruby wanted to be moved out of there. Dorothy Kilgallen, they got to release her files. We got to look at her closely. And JFK, one of his Kennedys, Mary Myers, was murdered about a year later. I want to look into that and see. I want to take a close look. Would the mob really send a guy who's got mob connections to take out Oswald? Did they do that to make it look like Oswald knew something, or did he really know something? Because you got to go back to the verbiage. Oswald goes like this. He goes, I'm just a patsy. But that's a well-framed line in the 40s, 50s, and early 60s, meaning that I'm just being put here to take the fall for the guys who really did it. And I really firmly believe that back then the biggest people, the most powerful people, did not want that case solved for whatever reasons. Involvement, embarrassment, or just let's move on. And Lyndon Johnson always wanted to be the president. Let's face it, he's getting old. Kennedy gets reelected. Johnson will be 60 in 68. And back then, that was considered old, guys. And I love Steve from Manhattan, Big Bird, Tower of Jelly, Jesse Kelly, always goes after Fauci, but he shouldn't. It's the Communist Chinese that sent it here.
What are you looking for in a new smart TV? 4K picture quality? High quality and immersive sound? A sleek design? All of those are givens, but only the new Roku Pro Series has all of those and the Roku streaming experience, an award-winning OS. Get fast, easy access to all your apps like iHeart, where you can stream all your favorite music, radio, and podcasts all day, and regular all-inclusive trips to Roku City. The new Roku Pro Series, a smart TV built by the streaming pros.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
How do you answer that question, Mike? He's all yours.
Wow, well, I'm not sure there's a question in there, but look, Danny, thank you. I agree with you on some things. I disagree with you on some other things. You know, there's all these. One of the things I do deal with in the book, the Ancient Aliens of JFK book, is what exactly did happen with the assassination. And you know, you have all these crazy theories. There were 8 shooters and 16 shots, and you got all these really dumb people putting out really bad videos and DVDs and things that are, you know, making them a lot of money. But I can say there were 4 shots because we have acoustic evidence. There was 4 shots. 3 of them came from the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository, and that was almost certainly Lee Harvey Oswald. The fatal headshot did come from the grassy knoll. From the angle he was at, he would not have hit Jackie. It was an easy shot. I stood right in the spot where there's the Mary Mormon photograph that shows the badge man up there. It's a guy in a Dallas police uniform. You've got Gordon Arnold, who was a witness who was standing there when the shot went right past his ear. You have all these other witnesses that said the shot came from the hill, the grassy knoll. You have the Marie Muchmore film, which not only shows that Kennedy was hit in the front because there's a spray of blood in one of the frames before
Wait a
the
second.
back
You're
of the
telling me
head.
there's another film besides?
Oh yes, the Marie
film?
Muchmore film and the Orville Nix film and the Marie Muchmore film tell you a lot about what was happening, and it shows clearly that he was hit from the front because blood is already coming out of the front of his head before the bullet has even exited the back. Now it's gruesome to talk about this, but he was shot from the grassy knoll. The man that was described is an exact description of Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit, who Lee Harvey Oswald murdered about 35 minutes after the assassination. So I think it's pretty clear that Oswald and Tippit were supposed to meet up. They did. Oswald had orders to kill him. He killed him. He was the rifleman on the grassy knoll. And then Jack Ruby killed Oswald. So you got, you know, Oswald and Tippit did the murder. Oswald kills Tippit. Ruby kills Oswald, and then Ruby never really talks. And by the way, did you know one of the reasons I wrote this book was because there is an FBI document where a witness swore that he saw Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit, Lee Harvey Oswald, having a meeting 7 days before the assassination. Guess where? Jack Ruby's nightclub.
More of this when we come back on Coast to Coast AM.
Looking for the truth? You'll find it on Coast to Coast AM.
So you've been watching some of the hearings going on in Washington, D.C. Do you think these legislators really want to get to the answer, or are they doing this to show face? What do you think's going on?
I think it's more a case of you have been lying to us. You aren't elected. You people assumed positions within the military, within the intelligence departments, and you are withholding information from us.
And of course, the big question is, why? What are they hiding?
They're hiding the fact that they don't have answers. And again, I think they have just perpetuated this lie for so many years that they would lose all faith. The idea that you're talking about the biggest story in the last 1,000 years and you have been deceiving the world about this, that is criminal as far as I'm concerned.
You know those megaships that sail with thousands of passengers? It might surprise you to learn how much passengers win or lose in the onboard casino may determine whether or not the cruise is profitable. I'm Rudy Maxa with today's Travel Minute from Rudy Maxa's World. Cruise lines are offering low prices since several enormous ships came into service this past year. They want to put heads in beds because they have a secret. They often make their money on the ancillary stuff. Don Hanrahan, CEO of Celebrity Cruises, says 30% of the company's revenue comes from onboard spending, which is why cruise lines are increasing the size of their casinos, building big onboard shopping malls, and adding fancy restaurants where passengers pay a surcharge of as much as $30 a head to dine. Traditionally, bars, casinos, and art auctions generated most onboard revenue. But now malls, spas, photographs, internet services, and phone services, along with bingo cards, are important revenue sources. Once, bridge and engine room tours and yoga classes were free, not anymore. So consider that price to take a cruise just the beginning of what you'll spend. The cruise lines sure do. Info at rudymaxa.com.
Has anybody told you about Coast to Coast AM tonight?
Coast to Coast is one of those programs that deals with strange mysteries. We'll look at Bigfoot. We'll look at UFOs. We'll look at real science. And we'll also look at conspiracies and what it all means to you, the listeners of Coast to Coast AM.
It's the best in overnight talk radio. Coast to Coast AM. Looking for the truth? You'll find it on Coast to Coast AM.
What do you think the odds are of an alien civilization developing somewhere else?
Well, I think the odds of that happening are excruciatingly high. So if it's a 1 in a million chance that intelligent life develops, you still got a really big number. So I think it's really high that life is out there. In fact, intelligent life is out there. The big question, of course, is whether or not it's been here. That's the real question.
Coast to Coast AM sure sounds great in the middle of the night, but you don't have to be nocturnal to enjoy this amazing show. The Coast Insider is your key to a normal life. For 15 cents a day, you can wake up refreshed, knowing that last night's show is waiting for you with podcasting. Listen on your way to work, and again on your way home. Or listen to one of over 1,000 archived shows from the past 5 years. The Coast Insider Club is a must-have feature for all Coast to Coast AM listeners. Visit coasttocoastam.com to sign up today. You'll sleep like a baby, knowing you'll never miss your favorite guests or topics ever again. Remember, a 1-year subscription comes out to only 15 cents a day. Sign up today at coasttocoastam.com.
Just the way it is. Some things will never change. That's just the way it is. Ah, but don't you believe them?
To talk to Rich Berra, call the Wildcard line at 818-501-4109. The first-time caller line is 818-501-4721. To talk to Rich toll-free from east of the Rockies, call 800-825-5033. From west of the Rockies, toll-free, call 800-618-8255. International callers can reach Rich by calling their in-country Sprint access number, pressing option 5 and dialing toll-free 800-893-0903. Send Rich a text message anytime at 818-298-6521. This is Coast to Coast AM with Rich Barra.
It's just the way it is. Some things will never change. The deep state going to be deep. We're talking to Mike Barra from Ancient Aliens, really dropping some science on us. And one of the reasons I first started booking him, okay, so we talk about my day job all the time. I co-host a show with my friend John Jay. It's called John Jay and Rich, and you can find us on iHeartRadio. But we're a morning show. We're a pop show, have been for 20 plus years now. But ever since I've started fitting in or sitting in with George's crew here at Coast to Coast, my conspiracy TikTok has gone.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have supervision, enhanced hearing, extraordinary reflexes, to be, dare we say, superhuman? Well, Roku's new Pro Series TV can't do any of that for you. But with a 4K screen, side-firing speakers, and a blazing fast refresh rate, it'll sure feel like it. Elevate your entertainment using all your favorite apps like iHeart and play all your music, radio, and podcasts with the new Roku Pro Series. Your senses aren't better. Your TV is.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Just insane. And one of the things I keep seeing is that there's a secret space program. And what I want to ask Mike about now, and I know you've talked about it, is what is happening with Antarctica? Why does that keep on showing up on my TikTok as if there are like energy secrets, pyramids buried underneath there, a world that we can't go into beyond there? What do you know about Antarctica? And what did the Germans know?
Well, I know that I should be more active on TikTok, but I can't force myself to learn another social media at this point. But it is a great place to grow your presence, as long as they don't block you or ban you. We'll see what happens in the future with TikTok. But Antarctica is a fascinating place because of all the reasons you just described. There's this ancient fascination. Well, not ancient, but old fascination with it. The Germans went there for no apparent reason in the 1930s, and they founded New Schwabenland, which up until very recently, it was still New Schwabenland on the maps, large areas. And, the rumor is that they used U-boats and they went down into the entrance into the inner earth and actually found ancient civilizations in there. And it's pretty fascinating stuff. There's all these other crazy stories. I know Gino from the Y-Files talks about stories about these creatures that are called striders, that are like these giant spiders that will attack people and eat people. And, that's why they're so serious about not letting anybody really just go to Antarctica, that you have to have really a lot of special permissions. There's the story that Buzz Aldrin went there in 2016 and said what he saw there was the most horrifying thing he'd ever seen, and he couldn't wait to get away from the place. And so, there's all these stories. There's the ancient pyramid stuff. You have Lake Vostok, which is this isolated lake that's been, basically under ice for probably something like 30 million years. And God knows what sort of life forms are down there, what could still be living there. We certainly know that life is very resilient. It doesn't just disappear. And for that matter, what viruses and stuff could be down there, bugs and bacteria and viruses that we haven't dealt with in modern times. So, it's a place where you could weaponize stuff if you were interested in having a
or hide stuff
war. And and then there's Project Operation High Jump with Admiral Byrd, where he said some really weird things after he got back from Antarctica. And it's this whole operation where they went there and looked kind of like they got their rear ends beat. Some people say by the German Hannibal, the flying saucers, with highly advanced technology, kind of destroyed the American attempt to take over. And the reality is, if you look at that operation, it wasn't an exploration, a scientific exploration. It was an invasion, and it failed horribly because they broke it off and ran away with their tails between their legs. So,
do you think the flying saucers now are ours now and not aliens, the ones that people seem to be seeing, or the Tic Tacs that maybe it's just technology that they haven't really unveiled as being from our country or another country or Antarctica from that
some of them, yes, there are our own secret space program stuff, but there are aliens here. I've had 2 UFO sightings in my life, neither one of which I can explain. Not just in terms of technology, but there's this weird feeling you get, and whether you're seeing something that's not supposed to be here, and I can't really describe it, and I can't scientifically, tangibly analyze it, but I can tell you that I think that what I saw were not of this earth. But yet I do think very clearly other famous cases like STS-48 are most likely, that video is incredible, and STS-80, most likely American secret space program technology. Another thing that's really interesting, we brought up the Nazi Bell earlier. If you look at the Hannibal flying saucer, this sort of classic flying saucer shape, where you have this cupola in the middle, if you think about it, the Nazi Bell, given its size, it would fit right in that disc form perfectly. And you combine that with, say, T. Townsend Brown's research on disc-shaped objects and electrified hulls. If you had, it's very easy to see that you could have an anti-gravity reactor like the Nazi Bell placed inside of this disc-shaped object, which is what he was experimenting with all the way back to the 1920s.
Do you think it moves like a Frisbee? Like it rotates and
so
that's
it just flies. Yeah, it just takes off, and there's no gravity effect on it at all. And you start putting these little pieces together and the visuals, and it certainly could very well be reality. But the inspiration for a lot of this work may have come from other worlds, as Hermann Oberst said to Eric von Daniken one night. So we have a lot of mysteries to solve in Antarctica. We don't quite know what they are, but I'm hopeful that as we get through this period, we're in the age of Aquarius now, right? We've been in this occulted age of Pisces. It looks like that's ended probably on December 21st, 2012. December 21st, 2012. I hate to bring that up again. It ended, and now we're in this period of apocalypse, which actually means a lifting of the veil, revelation, and I think we're just going to get more and more truth about all these things.
You could completely convince me that we're in the middle of an apocalypse. Okay, so we only have about 20 minutes with you before we have to move on, and I know the calls are just flying in here for you. So let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll roll through your calls for Mike Barrow when we come back next on Coast to Coast AM.
During tax season, your sensitive info does a lot of traveling to places you can't control, stopping off at payroll, your accountant or tax preparer, and other countless data centers on its way to the IRS. Any of them can expose you to identity theft because they all have the info on your W-2, just the ticket for criminals to steal your identity. No wonder the IRS reported tax fraud due to identity theft went up 20% last year. You need LifeLock. They monitor millions of data points per second and alert you to threats you could miss. If your identity is stolen, LifeLock's U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, backed by the $1 Million Protection Package, and restoration is guaranteed or your money back. Don't let identity thieves take you for a ride. Get LifeLock protection for tax season and beyond. Join now, save up to 40% your first year with promo code George. Call 1-800-LifeLock or go to lifelock.com. Use promo code George for 40% off. Terms apply.
You know the feeling when you're about to cut into a juicy steak and hope it tastes as perfect as it looks? Worry no more. With Chef IQ Sense, it's possible to get it right every time. How? It's a modern, completely wireless cooking thermometer that eliminates under or overcooking your food, no matter how you cook it. Chef IQ Sense was designed to withstand extreme heat and can even survive in your deep fryer. From grilling to roasting or baking, Chef IQ Sense guarantees that your chicken, meat, or fish will come out exactly to your preferred outcome. SCARIES.com. Using Chef IQ Sense is so simple. Insert the wireless probe into your food, choose your desired doneness on the Chef IQ app, and it'll alert you when it's ready. Stay connected and monitor your food from anywhere over Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So stop the confusion, eliminate the risk, and serve every meal with confidence. Chef IQ Sense works out of the box and with your favorite appliances. You can find the IQ Sense at chefiq.com and save 15% at checkout with code USA. That's chefiq.com.
Welcome back to Coast AM. I'm your host this evening. My name's Rich Barra. Our guest, Mike Barra, spelled differently, but you know, Mike's awesome at this stuff, this alien stuff, and the Kennedy stuff, all of it, all the secrets. He's exposing a bunch of them tonight. Let's see if we can whip through some of your calls here. Interested in west of the Rockies, Mark from Roseville, California, says that he has taken some extremely rare UFO photos. Welcome to the show, Mark. You're on Coast to Coast AM with Mike Barra.
Yeah. Good evening. Yes, I did. He also mentioned Nikola Tesla in 1928 about the UFO patent. Does Mike know about that?
Actually, no, I don't know about that. I know Tesla used, there were very few radios available, radio stations or anything in the early 1900s. And I know during that time, he did try to listen in during a close opposition of Mars for radio signals. And he did say he believed he received some.
Oh, really?
So, oh, yeah, absolutely. That's in Ancient Aliens on Mars, actually, another book. So he was very fascinated by this stuff. And of course, a lot of people now know that the person who took all of his files and examined them and decided whether they were going to be classified or declassified was named a theoretical physicist named John Trump, who happened to be the uncle of the current president. So don't tell me for a second that he didn't sit his nephew down on his knee and tell him all about what he found out in those Tesla files.
But doesn't Trump seem to kind of like not really directly answer any of those alien questions? Like, there's a lot of people that are into it. I'm not into it. He kind of just handles it and lets it go, right? He doesn't really address it directly.
He does, but he also has admitted things that no other president's ever admitted. He's admitted that he's been briefed on UFOs, and nobody has done that since Truman, when they had the incursion in Washington, D.C. in the 1950s. And he had to say, yeah, they're briefing me on all these sightings because it was crazy stuff. And so there's that. And then, another thing I think is really interesting, which actually connects to the Kennedy thing is, in 2017, we had all of a sudden this wave of media attention on UFOs. We had the TTSA videos, most of which I think are drones, but we had those videos. We had Elizondo come out. We had, they had his own show. They had 60 Minutes doing stories about it. You had the New York Times and the Washington Post, which is sort of deep state media, doing all these reports about UFOs. And then we had the Kennedy documents released. And then Trump said, look.
Hello, iHeart listener. We have a confession to make. Both iHeart and this commercial you're listening to right now would probably sound a heck of a lot better on the new Roku Pro Series TV. It's got side-firing speakers that fill your room with sound, Dolby Atmos audio that puts you right in the middle of the entertainment, and the ability to pair seamlessly with your home theater sound systems that already have surround sound and booming bass. If all that sounds too good to be true, it'll sound even better on the new Roku Pro Series. Your hearing isn't better, your TV is.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Some of the Kennedy stuff we can't release yet. We're supposed to be releasing them now in the near future. But I thought to myself, why do we have suddenly all this media attention on aliens and UFOs? And here's the thing. If my theory is basically correct, that the revelation of aliens or something had something to do with the reason President Kennedy was assassinated, because Trump did tell one person, I can't tell you what's in the files yet, but it's terrible. It seems to me that the way you would get people used to that revelation when it's ready to be made would be to start really ramping up the alien media thing and get people really thinking about the possibility. So we've had these congressional hearings. And so that fits exactly with the Brookings Institute's report of getting people conditioned. So maybe the reason they put everything off for 4 years with the new Kennedy documents is because in there's going to be some implications that it had something to do with aliens. Maybe there'll even be a note in there that there might be MJ-12 might have been real. And if that's the case, then they have to get the society prepared. So maybe that's why we delayed the release of the rest of the Kennedy documents until now. Hey, maybe, Rich, maybe I'm right. Maybe it has something to do with that.
And then finally, you could prove that you're not crazy, as people have been saying for all these years.
Which would be a really cool thing.
Self-affirming.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's go to the first-time caller line. Dean in Huntington Beach, California. Dean brings up an interesting question. With all the conspiracies, he's wondering why you think that the moon landing was real at all. Dean, go ahead.
Yeah, I just find it ironic that, a show that's built itself on government conspiracies and cover-ups buys the official NASA moon landing.
What about that, Mike?
Well, okay. The reason I take that position is because there is absolutely zero evidence that it was fake. There's no evidence whatsoever. I mean, every single claim that the conspiracy theorists have ever come up with is easily debunkable. It simply isn't true. We had the technology, we had the know-how, we had the manufacturing capability, we had the motivation to go. Whether it was my motivation, the Kennedy thing, or whether it was simply the Cold War win over the Russians, and everything you see on there is, I think, exceedingly authentic. There's absolutely nothing in any of it that indicates there was a problem. And I believe we had to go to the moon because the real reason we went was to retrieve this ancient alien technology. So if that was the driving force, and again, I can make that case. That's a whole separate show. Then, yeah, of course we went. They just went out of their way not to.
Did we retrieve ancient technology from the moon?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes, and I've got pictures of some of it. Richard Hoagland has pictures of some of it. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was, the first mission was purely symbolic. Let's land on the moon. Let's have a Masonic ceremony.
Plant the flag.
Consecrate the moon as a Masonic temple. And the other missions were all about collecting technology, high tech.
How much of the Freemason Illuminati stuff do you think is the undercurrent of how things go, the future, the I don't know, the stock market, all of that? How much do you think is all based on all that group, the cabal, as they say?
Yeah, the cabal. A lot of it is significant. It's out there, but look, there's a war going on. I know from a friend that there's aspects of the military that are not on board with the current administration, and there are aspects that are, and there is a war going on for the future of this nation, and implied from that, inherent to that, the world. And it's not over yet. I think the good guys are winning, but it's not over. So we have quite a ways to go. And so again, as I would love to debate Bart Sibrel sometime, but about the moon landings, and the Kubrick thing is just ridiculous. But look, every time a claim
that's pretty dug in the culture, though. The Stanley Kubrick filmed it.
It's
when we had had Jay Wiedner on here, and he would say, "I'm not saying we didn't go to the moon. I'm saying what he would say is the video that you're seeing is 100% fake." And then you've seen it a million times. You've seen the rocks labeled with letters. You've seen the background that looked like it was straight from 2001: Space Odyssey. You've seen, how did they get the lunar rover on the moon? How did they get that camera shot where everybody's perfectly framed?
I can answer every single one of those. I can answer, and I can answer many more. And Jay doesn't know his rear end from a hole in the ground when it comes to that. He's not an engineer. He's just a guy trying to get attention. And, I've known Jay for 15, 20 years. We both worked with Hoagland, and we completely split on this issue.
Yeah, I know he definitely disagrees with Hoagland because he thinks that the glass structures that you see on the moon are basically from a screen that they shot against. And
okay. So again, the recent landers, the landing we just had, the Blue Ghost lander and
Firefly.
the Chinese landers, Firefly, you can see again the glass stuff reflecting the same way. So is Jay going to argue that Stanley Kubrick now is making films, for the Chinese 20 years
you can
after?
see on the Firefly videos, you can see reflections from the glass.
Absolutely, you can. And they tried to explain it. They tried to say, well, there's something refracting the light here. And this is a phenomenon that's been spotted before on the Apollo missions. And NASA says, the dust, somehow static electricity makes the dust fly up 20 miles into the sky above the moon, which is complete nonsense. So it's a nonsensical explanation. And, look, I don't want to rip on Jay too hard here, but he does not know what he's talking about. And by the way, if he wants to debate me on this show or any other show, let's go at it. I'd love to put a rest to this. And I actually helped the Y-Files folks write their episode about Kubrick.
Yeah, it's great, by the way. The Y-Files episode with AJ
go there.
is amazing.
Go there. Watch his video, watch my video, AJ's video, and make your own conclusions. But
yeah, his
so much of this is just that people didn't live through it, and they don't realize what they're looking at. They don't understand what they're looking at.
It's true. I can give you that. AJ's video is great, by the way. I think that's probably one of their probably most watched episodes.
Like
the Y-Files.
Yeah, like 6.2 million views, and I'm like, well, I co-wrote that. That's
really
really cool to be associated with two cultural phenomenons now, Ancient Aliens and the Y-Files. I'm really proud of myself for.
As you should be. Let's go to the wild card line. Let's talk to Robert in upstate New York. Robert, welcome to Coast AM. You're on with Mike Barra.
Good morning, gentlemen. I happen to have had the privilege of knowing some of the people from World War II personally. Some lived to be 100. One's lived to be 102 now. And just I was born on the 4th of July, and his name is John Schott, S-H-O-T-T. Just had a birthday party for him last 4th of July. And he went through torture and so forth, but was rescued by MacArthur's going back to the Philippines and so forth. But that's another story. About the space, I've also had the privilege of knowing some people from NASA and have some connections with Ed Mitchell and so forth. And we had a UFO group of engineers that were from GE and other corporations that were in a private conferences. But without going to that, after World War II, has the guest here ever read the book The Politician about
60 seconds to answer here, Mike. Sorry, we're up against the clock here.
I'm sorry, what was the question? I didn't really catch the question.
Well, I know for a fact there is some film from World War II, through the war and after the war, from 1951 actually from 45 to 51, and they call it. It's referred to as the Eisenhower.
Hey, sorry, I got to cut you off here. I'm sorry about that, John, but we will definitely follow up on that, the film from World War II about UFOs. But Mike, I want to thank you for being on our show for the last couple of hours. You can find all of Mike's stuff, his books, his podcasts, his YouTube, all linked up at Coast to Coast AM.
Broadcasting live across the world right now. This is the John, Jay, and Rich radio program.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have supervision, enhanced hearing, extraordinary reflexes, to be, dare we say, superhuman? Well, Roku's new Pro Series TV can't do any of that for you. But with a 4K screen, side-firing speakers, and a blazing fast refresh rate, it'll sure feel like it. Elevate your entertainment using all your favorite apps like iHeart and play all your music, radio, and podcasts with the new Roku Pro Series. Your senses aren't better. Your TV is.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include a lot more people than ourselves. Loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, we help plan your financial picture with the bigger picture in mind. Because even though our business is helping guide your finances, our ambition is to make it mean so much more. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.